the big news, UFC 245, Kamaru Usman is still the UFC welterweight champion. He retains the belt by defeating Colby Covington in the 5th round via TKO. What a fight. It was an amazing fight. Not one single takedown attempt in that fight. And if you heard our live radio show before the event, we were on the air. Chael P was on with me. New York Rick was on with me. I predicted that it would be essentially a kickboxing match. Now, did I think there would not be one single takedown attempt? No. I thought maybe at the end of the round, someone might try to steal the round by going for a takedown. But in the end, there wasn't one. And that's amazing, considering the fact that both these guys are wrestlers. But as we've seen time and again in the sport, when you have two great wrestlers going toe-to-toe, the wrestling actually cancels each other out, and they stay on their feet. And it was a fun fight. Colby Covington landed some big shots. Kamaru Usman has a chin. He landed some big shots. I scored the first 2 rounds in favor of Colby Covington. I had him winning 2-0 going into the 3rd, and then everything changed in the 3rd. As you may have heard, going into the 4th round, Colby Covington told his corner that he may have broken his jaw, and this has led to some discussion as to whether or not they should have actually stopped the fight. Good thing they didn't for his sake, because he still wanted to fight, but no one even batted an eye. Like, his cornerman, Conan Silveira, was like, all right, I just need 10 more minutes out of you, and that's pretty amazing. Like, if I would have broken my jaw, like, if I break my jaw right now, I'm in a ball crying for the next 3 days, begging for my mom to come and save me. Imagine breaking your jaw. Just for a second, imagine the sensation of breaking your jaw. I don't care if it's a big fracture. I don't care if it's a small fracture. And then continuing to fight for another 2.5 rounds, continuing to get punched in the face and, hanging in there. I know he got dropped in the 5th, and towards the end of that last round, it was starting to look really bad for Colby Covington. But let's give this guy some credit. So I had the first 2 rounds for Colby, 3rd and 4th for Usman, close rounds. And then the 5th, I had him winning it. Eventually, it was stopped. Didn't have a big problem with the stoppage by Mark Goddard. I know that Colby's upset about the stoppage. I spoke to him briefly yesterday via text message, and he's taking some time off, understandably so. I mean, his jaw is messed up, so hard to speak. I know he was upset. I think the more egregious moment in the fight was the quote-unquote low blow, which did not seem to be a low blow. If I'm being honest, from my vantage point, the eye pokes did seem to be legit. That one was a major turning point in the fight because it halted Covington's momentum. But in the end, Usman wins and deserves a lot of credit for coming back. If you listen to Rashad Evans's commentary after the fight on SportsCenter, I thought he had a very astute point about Usman stopping his switching of stances, which led to a more conventional attack and a more basic attack, but it just got him on the straight and narrow and was able to focus him on doing what he had to do to win those 3rd and 4th rounds going into the 5th, where, of course, the tide completely turned and he was able to finish Colby Covington. But for me, I understand. Look, Usman deserves all the credit in the world. He is the king of the welterweights. He ends the decade as the welterweight champion, and now we wonder what's next for him. But one thing that just kind of did bother me a little bit is this reluctancy to give Colby his due. Now, I know he's a very divisive character. He's a very polarizing character. A lot of people were happy that he lost, and that's okay. It's okay to be happy that he lost. It's okay to cheer for Usman, even if you're not an Usman fan, but because you hate Colby Covington so much that you wanted Usman to win. That's okay. That's fine. But let's give this guy some props, man. The guy fought 2.5 rounds with a broken jaw. And that fight was essentially fought in a phone booth for the majority of the fight. They were going toe-to-toe in the trenches. It was a tremendous battle. And I see people using words like, oh, he got his comeuppance. He got what he was due. He what he deserved for everything that he said and everything that he did after the fight. By saying that and not giving him any credit, essentially what you're doing is proving to the world that everything that he did, all the antics, the gimmick, all that stuff, it worked. Because you don't usually, no one says Max Holloway got his comeuppance. No one says Jermaine Durandamy. No one uses terms like that in the fight game unless you truly despise the person who lost. And why did you despise him? Because of the things that he said, because of the things that he did. But he told us time and again that he was doing that to get a reaction out of us. Now, does it absolve him from some of the things they said, the abhorrent things that he said, particularly about the likes of the late Glenn Robinson? No, but you're only just admitting to yourself that you fell for it, that you were a mark just like everyone else. He wanted you to fall for it, and you did. And so it's okay to root against the guy. It's okay to root in favor of Kamaru because you hated the guy. But can we just take a step back and appreciate the fact that this guy went in there, fought like he did, had a broken jaw, suffered a broken jaw, and was able to continue to fight? Like, let's give both of these guys some credit. You know, I know that fans are betting, and I know you're drinking, and I know it's entertainment and stuff like that. But if we could just, on this Monday, take a step back and appreciate what both those men did, the kind of fight that they put on, and the kind of heart and will and determination that they showed. Forget about all the other stuff. Forget about comeuppance. Forget about all that nonsense, all the talk, all the rhetoric. These two guys are high-class fighters, high-level fighters. I think what Dana White said was very apropos on Saturday night. You know, regardless of everything that Colby says, the guy deserves credit for being a really tough and talented fighter. And I hope that at some point that can be the story. Now, did he bring a lot of this upon himself? Sure. But just take a step back and at least appreciate that. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying for you to be a fan of his to get his poster or anything like that, but it's really remarkable what he was able to do. And now the big question is, who's next for Kamaru Usman, right? Who's next for this guy? I think the big story coming out of Saturday is that the three champions, one of them being new because Alexander Volkanovski defeated Max Holloway with a phenomenal game plan, a phenomenal performance. He's now won 18 in a row. The 13-fight featherweight win streak for Max Holloway has come to an end. Now, all of a sudden, we have our first Australian-born champion. Because remember, Robert Whittaker was not born in Australia. Volkanovski, Australian-born champion, defeats Holloway in a fairly one-sided affair. And he's the new featherweight king. And, of course, Amanda Nunes retained against Jermaine Durandamy. But to me, the biggest takeaway as I walked away from T-Mobile Arena on Saturday was, who's actually next for these three champions? Because sometimes and oftentimes when a champion wins, defends, captures a belt, you know who's next in line. You know who's on deck, right? Like when Israel Adesanya defeated Robert Whittaker back in October, you knew that Paulo Costa was up next. Of course, he got injured, but we knew who was the number one contender. In all three respective weight classes that were on display in those title fights, we don't really know who's next. Like, who's next for Kamaru Usman? Is it Jorge Masvidal? Does Jorge Masvidal even want that fight? I'm not convinced. I don't even think he's going to go for that fight. I think he's going to wait to see what happens on January 18th. I think he's going to wait to see if Conor McGregor wins, and then he's going to go for that fight. And if not, maybe one of the Diaz brothers. So who is next for Kamaru Usman? And who's next for Alex Volkanovski? Is it really Max Holloway? Are they really going to run it back? Is there a demand to run it back? I know they're going to Australia for a pay-per-view later next year, so you could sell it. You have to put Volkanovski on that show. Will anyone else emerge? Korean Zombie this weekend against Frankie Edgar? Who's there? And then what about at 135? Is it Irene Aldana, who had a great performance on Saturday but has only won her last two in a row? Is she ready for someone like Amanda Nunes? Is it Megan Anderson, who's only won one in a row? Is she ready for someone like Amanda Nunes? Nunes said she wanted to fight at 145 in her next fight. It's very wide open for those three champions. Very wide open. So I'm really curious to see where they all go from here. Interesting times. Great performances across the board. What about that win for Petr Yan against Uriah Faber? I said it when the fight was announced. I didn't like that fight for Faber. I thought Yan was too young, too tough, too powerful. It just didn't make sense. It didn't have to happen. Slowly build Faber back up. Buy yourself some time for the TJ Dillashaw return. Maybe a title. But like Yan at this point, man, that's tough. And then Jose Aldo loses in his 135-pound debut. We were worried about his weight. We were worried about the cut, the way he looked, all kind of sucked in and drawn out. Made the weight and looked pretty darn good. I thought he won the fight, 2-1. I thought he won the second and the third round. Didn't. But then afterwards, Dana White saying that, maybe he'll fight Henry Cejudo. And I know Cejudo put out that video. But how do you justify giving Jose Aldo a title shot now coming off 2 straight losses? That would be bizarre. When you have Aljamain Sterling out there, when you have Corey Sandhagen out there, when you have Petr Yan out there, how do you justify giving Jose Aldo a title shot? That to me is bizarre. And what about Jeff Neal with the win over Mike Perry? A very impressive win for a guy who has become one of the breakthrough stars of 2019 and may, in fact, end up being one of the first title contenders to emerge from Fortis MMA in Dallas, that up-and-coming team as well. Matt Brown with a nice win. Brandon Moreno with a nice win. All across the board, Chase Hooper with a nice win. So that's the 245 story. Hello, everyone. It's Ariel Helwani. I just came here to thank you for watching our ESPN YouTube channel. It's the best. You know what else is the best? The ESPN app. You can get highlights, analysis, all that stuff and more. And if you want premium content and live streaming sports, there's only one place for all of that. It's ESPN Plus.